Disciple here once again with Hearthstone Curios. Hearthstone just went through a lot of changes with the new expansion, Journey to Un'Goro, the standard rotation, the addition of the Hall of Fame, and it seems like Blizzard's also more actively nerfing cards with the recent changes to Buccaneer and Spirit Claws. It's actually pretty exciting that Blizzard is starting to nerf more cards, and hopefully it'll lead to better metas overall and a pretty healthy competitive environment. But when was the last time Blizzard actually buffed a card? Well, Bane of Doom was changed to be able to summon better demons in March of 2015, but that was almost more of a bug fix than an intentional buff. Really, the most recent actual buff to a card was when they made Unleash the Hounds cost 2 mana instead of 4 in a beta patch over 3 years ago. Now, it's pretty crazy that Blizzard has access to digitally changing their cards pretty much instantly with just a hotfix, and they use this power occasionally with nerfs, but they never really seem to use it with buffs. Since the game has been released, not a single card has actually been buffed unless you want to count Bane of Doom. So that's why we thought today we'd talk about some of the pros and cons of buffing cards, and if we might potentially see more of it in the future. So let's get right into it. So what are some of the pros to buffing cards, or the reasons that Blizzard should do it? Well, Blizzard doesn't really buff cards at all, but when they have buffed in the past, it usually has had a very significant impact on the game. Moreover, even the smallest buff can make a huge difference. Small Time Buccaneer, which was nerfed to have just 1 less health, weakened the card a ton. But now imagine the same thing in reverse, if just 1 health were added to a card. What we're getting at here is that buffing an unplayed card is often essentially just like adding a new card into the game. When Bane of Doom was patched, it went from being completely unplayable to actually popping up in some Reno, Handlock, and even Zoo lists. It eventually stopped being played, but the point was that since no one ever played the card, and then people did, it was basically like an entirely new card entered the standard card rotation. That means that buffing cards has potentially all the benefit of releasing new cards while also removing an unplayable bad card from the existing pool. It could help keep the meta fresh, keep players happy and excited about the game, give content creators and streamers like me something to talk about, and it gives their audience something to watch, and a lot of other pretty good things along with those lines. Buffing a card or two even every couple months would be pretty great, and while Blizzard can't release new expansions every month, they certainly could buff a card or two during the lull between expansions to keep the meta fresh. So what other benefits does buffing cards have? Well, a lot of times players will have a favorite card or two or a favorite deck, and unless that player is the most competitive person on Earth, a lot of times their favorite card might be pretty bad. Blizzard buffing cards or archetypes once in a while that are pretty weak, or don't get played, could only help format diversity and keep players that love those cards or decks happy. If someone loves playing a big, meaty control paladin, but it just isn't doing too well, maybe buffing a couple of those cards to make it at least somewhat viable could be really great for players who just like playing for fun. It also really makes players feel good when their cards are buffed. One of the reasons that Blizzard has given for not nerfing cards more often is that players hate to log in and see that a card that they own has been changed and is worth less. But along those exact same lines, logging in and seeing that a card that you own and potentially even love or really want to put into a deck but can't has been buffed feels really great, since your entire collection is worth just a little bit more and it's a little bit more playable. So that seems like a lot of benefits for buffing cards. And so what are some of the drawbacks that keep Blizzard from doing it? Well, the first issue is definitely balance. Blizzard definitely has to be wary of making a card too strong to the point where it dominates the meta and makes it stale and not fun. Now, this can usually be avoided through testing, but if Blizzard's doing buffs and nerfs in the middle of expansion being out, they have to test it with the current meta, the cards that they're testing right now, and if the buff or nerf might make it in the next month, how strong will it be after the next rotation or expansion? Now, of course, Blizzard also isn't able to test everything, which it seems like we've seen especially with the current expansion, with some of the quests being dramatically stronger than others, and some things like the Rogue quest potentially being a little bit too unbalanced. Basically, they'll have to do a lot more testing if they're going to be buffing cards all the time, and it makes their overall testing less accurate as a result, since they have to test the current cards with the new potential cards and the other potential cards that are going to be changed, and really there'd just be a lot of testing they have to do behind the scenes to see what kind of buffs they want to make, as opposed to a nerf where it doesn't necessarily matter what happens to that one card, since all the other decks are going to be the ones being played, not necessarily the decks using those cards. This is why we usually see buffs or nerfs happen around or close to the same time as a new expansion, and if you're releasing a bunch of new cards soon, that kind of defeats half the purpose of making these new cards by buffing the bad old ones. The other reason for not buffing cards is to avoid changing the game too much, which is something that a lot of players don't necessarily understand, but Blizzard seems to really have a hard time with doing. Although most people probably wouldn't complain about their cards getting buffed unless they became really OP, players might get mad that they dusted a legendary earlier and then it got buffed later on, or players returning to the game might not be happy that, you know, some card now has Wind Fury or has extra health and it just isn't the way they remembered it. However, I really feel like Blizzard should be catering to the people that actively play the game, not necessarily to the people who stopped playing, especially since someone who stopped playing doesn't want to come back to the same game that they left, because there's got to be a reason that they left in the first place. If I left and stopped playing Hearthstone, I don't think I would ever return to it unless the game saw some real changes, and if that meant some of the cards that I really liked being buffed so that they were playable, that might even make me want to come back, since I would already own those cards and be willing to play them. However, the other issue is just money for Blizzard. If you are changing more cards and seeing more updates to the cards existing, it does make the new cards a little bit less exciting, and it makes it feel like maybe the expansions are a little bit less necessary. And while that would be amazing for every Hearthstone player since the expansions are getting so damn expensive, it certainly isn't necessarily a good call for Blizzard since people are still playing their game and still paying for the expansions. So overall, there are definitely a lot of strong arguments for buffing and not buffing cards, but I definitely feel like since we're in a digital medium, Blizzard should be able to make these changes a lot more often. We have seen a buff kind of go wrong in the past. One, Unleash the Hounds, was brought from 4 mana all the way down to 2, and it became far too strong, especially when comboed with Starving Buzzard, which was also 2 mana at the time. So on turn 4, you could play Buzzard and Unleash the Hounds, and generally draw between 2 and 4 cards, while also clearing your opponent's board and playing something like Timberwolf to make it some extraordinary trades. But of course, we haven't really seen all that many buffs, so we can't really see if they're all too strong or all maybe too weak. It would be nice if they experimented with that power at least a little bit more before choosing not to use it at all. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts on whether or not Blizzard should buff cards more or less often, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think they should buff more cards, or do you think all the balancing should be done in the expansions that are released 3 times a year? Anyway, let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I love reading your guys' comments and seeing what you have to say. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace.